Hey guys, when I was reading the comments, there was one question which kept coming back over and over again. It went along the lines, hey, what was in the tank, what were your templates like, which doctrine is the best, etc, etc. So I thought about making a video on this topic. I will tell you which templates I prefer, but I think it would be beneficial to also make it easier for you to understand why. In other words, to explain to you all of these stats, all of these numbers, so it will be easier for you to change the templates based on the situation you are in. Let's start with the easy stuff. Soft attack and hard attack, they basically tell you how many times your division will try to deal damage to opposing division based on its hardness, this thin down here. It basically tells you how much of the division is made of soft targets like infantry, and hence soft attack will be dealt against it, or hard attacks like tanks, etc. If this division was fighting exactly the same template, it would have dealt like 100 to 120 soft attack and nearly 500 hard attack to the opposing division. Okay, I need to add two important things here. Firstly, in this case, hardness doesn't matter that much, because this division has basically the same amount of soft and hard attack. However, if this division was facing an infantry battalion or something like that, something without heavy weapons, something with very low hard attack, then it would have done basically no damage to this division, because 80% of their attacks they could do would be based on their very low hard attack. And secondly, I need to make something clear. I was slightly inaccurate here, because soft attack, hard attack, they both just say how many times division will attempt to deal damage. So it does not translate directly into damage done. There are still more factors to consider. Things like defense or breakthrough. They are basically the same thing. The only difference is that defense tells you how many times division which is defending will try to avoid attack by the enemy, and breakthrough will tell you how many times division which is attacking will try to avoid damage, which means that for each attempt there is, imagine, a dice rolling, and if those soft attacks or hard attacks go below defense, then they have, let's say, 10% chance of dealing damage, while soft attacks above defense or breakthrough have 80%, 60%, I'm not actually sure about the numbers here now. The thing is that both defense and breakthrough are finite, while soft attack and hard attack actually just keep resuming with each round. So there will always be a time when division runs out of defense or breakthrough, and then they will start taking more damage. Okay, I'm coming back to the ground now. What does it mean in practical terms? It's an argument for making bigger divisions, because each battalion will add more defense, more breakthrough to your division stats, and therefore the bigger divisions stay longer in battle, may it be attacking with higher breakthrough or defending. If we somehow divided this division in two, these stats would have halved. Add together, the stats would have been the same, but each division would individually start taking more damage earlier on, hence it would get deorged faster. Another factor on which depends the final amount of damage done is armor and piercing. If division cannot be pierced, it is taking 50% less damage to strengthen organization, and I believe it is also dealing slightly more damage, or it's dealing damage more often. The final amount of armor and piercing division has depends solely on its equipment. It's rather easy how it's counted. 30% of armor comes from the best and highest armored tank in the division, and then 70% comes from the average of the division. With piercing, it's 40% comes from the best performing machine in division, and 60% comes from average piercing of the division. As you can see, a lot of emphasis is put on the best technology. You can use this. Let's say you want to quickly boost your piercing on division, then just add one tank destroyer and see the difference. Plus 12% piercing. If we put second, then the piercing goes up just by 1. It's because the first dramatic increase is that tank destroyer has highest piercing, and those are those 40%. Then the one average, as you can see, a lot of emphasis is put on the best technology. You can use this. Let's say you want to quickly boost your piercing on division, then just add one tank destroyer and see the difference. Plus 12% piercing. If we put second, then the piercing goes up just by 1. It is because TDs have slightly higher piercing than heavy tanks, and 40% of piercing comes from the tank with highest piercing, hence the dramatic increase. However, after we added a second tank destroyer, well, the increase was rather negligible, because the highest performing tank was already there, and now it was only about increase in average piercing of the division, which was not that big. In the same manner, it can also be used to boost armor of the division. Just one example, in my infantry division, 0 armor. If we throw in one heavy tank, it goes up to almost 50. See if you add second, yeah, not big difference anymore. Back to our story. Damage is down to strength and organization. Once division runs out of organization, it retreats from the battlefield or stops attacking, and well, strength is here represented by HP. If you see a division deployed, yeah, if it has all manpower and equipment, it will have 100% strength, but here we are getting onto something incredibly important. Let's say this division suffers 60 damage for 60 HP. Well, then it will lose 1/4 of its HP, hence it will lose 1/4 of its strength. It will lose 25% of its tanks, manpower, all equipment, etc, etc. But imagine if this division had only 120 HP, then the division would have lost half of its tanks, manpower, etc. What I am trying to say is that HP matters a lot. What affects HP now? Each tank division has only 2 HP. Each mechanized has 30 and motorized 25. That's why, because tanks are very expensive to produce. If we look at production cost in comparison to mediums, it really pays off to put mechanized into your tank division template, so you are losing less tanks basically. You're trying to boost HP of the division as much as possible. Let's say I would have done something really Pepega. If we remove all the mechanized, yeah, if we do this, our HP goes drastically down from 240 down to 30, and this tank division, although it has seemingly nice stats, would have gotten wiped out immediately. That's why you need to always put some motorized or mechanized in there, so you don't lose all the equipment. Also, it affects organization as well, because every tank has just 22 orc. However, HP is much more important. I will quickly mention the doctrines now. If you're going for tanks, you've got 2 options, either mobile warfare or superior firepower. Superior firepower has the advantage of giving you plus 20% bonus to soft attack and plus 20% bonus to hard attack. There is no bonus to soft and hard attack in case of mobile warfare. However, mobile warfare gives you plus 60% bonus to breakthrough on your tanks versus only 10% bonus in superior firepower. Then, of course, your tanks with mobile warfare have 15 more orc in the end than with superior firepower, which means that especially if you're attacking, you can attack for longer period of time and it's harder to get the orcs. So that's why I've been saying for more than a year that mobile warfare is much better than superior firepower in my viewpoint, but you know, some people still consider superior firepower the meta. So the general idea is that with mobile warfare, you're dealing 20% less damage for 50% longer period of time, while with superior firepower, you've got more immediate damage, and also, you know, superior firepower might be better if you're trying to actually defend with tanks, if you're trying to get tanks entrenched in forests or something and want to get tanks in battle first. However, yeah, I don't like this strat. I think that tanks are better just at counter-attacking and dealing damage in this way. And still, if you're trying to defend with superior firepower tanks against mobile warfare tanks, well, you're still gonna get the orc faster probably because they will have higher breakthrough and much more orc. Congratulations if you made it this far. Now we're going to talk about the templates. It of course depends who you are trying to fight. If you're going for mediums, I highly recommend playing with motorized instead of with mechanized. There are more reasons. Firstly, although mechanized give you more HP and also more defense, they are slower. So the big nerf is that your division will get much slower. It will lose the speed, which will mean less encirclements, less overruns. Secondly, mechanized cost 3 times as much as motorized and almost as much as medium tanks. If you're going medium tanks, and if you go medium tanks, I really recommend going mobile warfare. Superior firepower mediums have no sense whatsoever. Just try to make as many 40-width divisions as possible, so you can just overwhelm the enemy heavy tanks with numbers, or even if you go against mediums, you just want to be faster and have more of them. Of course, it depends who you're fighting. Let's say if you're fighting against allies, if you're fighting against someone with a lot of air power, or if you are fighting as allies against the Axis and you know that enemy has some CAS, just consider throwing in some anti-air. You know, the thing is that the CAS will always bomb first, and then the AA will shoot back and take down some of the bombers. The thing is that still enemy will be losing a lot of planes in this way, and having AA in division means that it negates some of the effects of not having air superiority. If enemy has air superiority, he will be nerfing speed of your division, defense, breakthrough, all this important stuff. If you have some AA in division, those effects will not be that severe. Okay, let's say you're fighting against an enemy which doesn't have much air power, or you have absolute air supremacy. Then forget about AA, just throw it out. Let's say you're going against heavy tank Russia. I would highly recommend putting tank destroyers in instead of AA. You know, having more TDs is actually a good idea as well. It doesn't boost your piercing that much, but you still want to have more hard attack because those tanks will have a lot of hardness. Also in this case it's better to have motorized instead of mechanized, not just for HP but because heavy tanks have more hard attack than soft attack, so you will be actually having lower hardness will actually help you in a way. Other thing you need to do is to make sure that your both TDs and medium tanks have 5 gun. I will not have XP for this. If you have, hold on. If we restart this, the thing is that like this, with 5 gun on both TDs and mediums, you should not have problems piercing heavy tanks armor. It depends of course on one thing, if they have upgraded armor 5. If you compare this, as on mediums, you should always upgrade gun first. Armor doesn't matter, you need speed and firepower. If you compare it to heavy tanks, where is it? Yeah, if we go for standard heavy tank design, now we can easily pierce heavy tanks armor because we haven't upgraded armor on the heavy tanks. Like this, everyone goes for more attacks, so they're upgrading gun first. If you're going against Russia, which is spamming out 41 heavy tanks, which is usual if you want to have enough of them, the armor will be low enough. So you shouldn't have that much problems. You see, now I upgraded 4 armor. We went up to 113. And now it's again a race about armor and piercing. The thing about armor in this case is that you can try to limit support companies to minimum, which is probably the engineers. You should never get rid of the engineers. They help you with crossing rivers and also with defense. But also with this build, you can try to get rid of some motorized, since as I said, mediums are rather cheap, and put more tanks in it and keep competing in this way. Yeah, to support companies, recon is recommended. Otherwise, if you're worried about reinforce rate, or you're playing with planning bonus, I would actually recommend logistical companies boosting both planning speed and, more importantly, reinforce rate. Signals if you're fighting in Africa. Field hospitals are actually quite nice because, XP, as I said in my previous video, for each level, train, regular, seasoned, veteran, for each level you get 25% bonus in combat, and in this way you are not just keeping your experience level, but you're also more likely to gain XP on those divisions and hence make them more effective in long run. Well, maintenance company, it's fun if you're going with heavy tanks against heavy tanks to put in maintenance companies, just, not just to boost reliability and limit losses to attrition, but also to capture enemy heavy tanks. It just saves you some industry. But you must remember that with each support company, you are losing on orc, you are losing on armor, you are losing on piercing, and in general, the combat performance is not going up. Of course, unless it's recon or engineers. Back to templates, with heavy tanks, it's basically the same as mediums, but you're playing the armor piercing game from opposing sides, so you're trying to boost your armor to not get pierced. If you're playing against mediums, if you're playing against heavy tanks, then just forget about armor and don't nerf your speed. I would always go for mechanized, or there's also one option instead of mechanized, which are, as I said, good for your which are good for your HP and defense. You can also go for arm tracks, which make it easier for you to cross rivers. Also, the problem is that they also have a big debuff in a forest, on contrary to mechanized. I feel like we could keep going back and forth like this indefinitely. I know that this video is going for quite a while already, so I will cut it short. I don't know that much to add anyway. You know, one thing about amount of mechanized, motorized you should have in your division. I would say that you should, if with orc it's easy, if you're going mobile warfare, you will have always enough orc, but with HP, you should try to have at least 150 with if you're going medium tanks. If you're going heavy tanks, yeah, then your industry usually cannot afford having low HP, so try to keep it high unless it would guarantee you that your divisions would not get pierced, but yeah, that's very situational. So try to stay somewhere between 5 to 8 motorized on mediums and 6 to 8 on heavy tanks. I would recommend going for 7. You know, it's like somewhere in the middle, and you still have you know, nice HP and piercing. Okay, that would be it from me for today, guys. Let me know in the comment sections what I missed, what would be your suggestions. Take care, and I'll see you next time.